Welcome everyone to another episode of Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom, where we examine the secrets of our cells and find new ways to help them live their best little microscopic lives. I'm Ethan, your affable observer of the human condition, speaking to you from what is often described as a vantage point of impeccable timing and sarcasm so dry, it could start a drought.
And I'm Alara, the quick-witted connoisseur of natural health. I'll try to keep our conversation from derailing into a spiral of comedic banter, though given the subject at hand, it's likely we'll get a good bit of humor out of these cells, vitamins, and molecules anyway.
Today's topic is all about vitamin E and how it boosts the immune system, especially for older adults. We'll be exploring why this antioxidant is such a big deal and sharing some insights from Dr. Mercola's analysis.
Right. Cellular wisdom wouldn't be cellular wisdom if we didn't talk about wise cells. Imagine a bunch of little monks in your bloodstream, wearing robes and chanting in unison. Except, instead of chanting, these T cells are rummaging through your body, picking fights with invading germs. They're basically the tough guys of your immune system.
I love the mental picture, tiny martial artists in our veins. Sounds like something you'd see in a retro animation. But according to the research Dr. Mercola highlighted, vitamin E gives these feisty T cells an edge.
Which is great. We all want an immune system that can ward off threats, especially as we get older. The older we get, the more our bodies say things like, I used to handle that. Now, maybe not. Like a retired action star saying, well, back in my day. But vitamin E swoops in with a comeback cameo, helping those older T cells move like they're in their prime again.
Let's start with the basics. The immune system has two main parts, innate immunity and adaptive immunity. The innate side is like the default security system that identifies intruders whether they're recognized or not. Then there's adaptive immunity, which is more like the hyper-specific intelligence-based approach.
Right. It's the difference between we see an intruder, stop them, and we see a suspicious individual wearing a purple hat who entered at 3:57 p.m., known for lifting wallets from unsuspecting bystanders near the pastries. The adaptive side is that good. It customizes. Within adaptive immunity, cell-mediated immunity is key. Certain T cells, known as cytotoxic T cells, directly take out infected cells. They're basically your body's micro-level ninjas.
And as the years pass, like an old car that needs more oil, our immune system's function can slow down, leaving us more susceptible to infections, chronic diseases, and other unwelcome house guests. That's where vitamin E apparently steps in.
Yes, Dr. Mercola points out that vitamin E, found in things like nuts and seeds, can boost immunity in seniors. But he also says, hold up, watch out for high levels of linoleic acid in seeds and vegetable oils. It's kind of a paradox. Here's your vitamin E. Oh, but also a big bowl of LA that needs you to take even more vitamin E.
That's always the challenge with certain foods. You want the nutrients, but you don't want the extra baggage. It's like trying to buy a phone without all those pre-installed apps you didn't ask for.
Precisely. And let's not forget Dr. Mercola's stance that a typical Western diet is so high in linoleic acid that it might be wise to find more strategic ways of boosting vitamin E, like eating grass-fed meats or certain fruits and veggies, without overloading on LA.
Now, let's also talk about how vitamin E works as a guardian of cells. You mentioned T cells earlier, but there's also the general antioxidant function. It's basically your body's personal rust protector.
Think of your cells like a brand new car. Over time, with the oxygen in the environment, the metal parts get rust spots and eventually break down if not cared for. Vitamin E is that protective layer of wax that keeps the car from corroding.
That's a nice analogy, and especially relevant for the elderly, where the car is no longer fresh off the lot. A little extra buffering from rust, oxidative stress can do wonders.
Yes, and there's research showing vitamin E's ability to boost T cell proliferation, meaning it helps produce more T cells, which equals more specialized immune fighters. If you think of your immune system as an army, vitamin E is the training program that helps build an army of strong recruits ready for deployment.
And that's particularly important for older adults because T cell function typically declines with age. So, if vitamin E is stepping in to help replenish that supply, it's like giving your immune system a fresh infusion of recruits.
Which leads us to some fascinating data. Seniors who took vitamin E experienced enhanced immune responses to infections. It's the difference between the body responding to an invader with, should we let them in? I'm too tired, you handle it, and, oh no, they didn't. Everybody move out.
It's good to see that science backing up the concept, because let's face it, for decades we've heard vitamin E is good for you, but it's nice to see the specifics on how it helps T cells and actually reduces real-world susceptibility to infections.
Now, vitamin E has other roles in healthy aging too. The immune system is a big piece, but we also need to talk about vitamin E's role in protecting cells generally. When those cells aren't protected, you can have any number of problems, from heart issues to brain fog.
Right, so it's not just about warding off colds. We have to consider the heart aspect, the brain aspect, and vision. With heart health, you don't want oxidative stress damaging blood vessels. Think of them like water pipes. Oxidation is basically rust that builds up inside those pipes. Once there's enough rust, you get blockages, and the water, or in this case, blood, can't flow the way it should.
And for cognitive function, vitamin E helps keep the mental wiring from short-circuiting. We don't want to rummage around in a fog of confusion, so it's good to know an antioxidant approach can help keep those neural pathways clear.
And if you add in the eye health aspect, you pretty much have a trifecta of benefits: heart, brain, eyes, plus immunity. That's a lot of coverage from a single vitamin.
Absolutely. But it's not as if we should all scurry to the store and chug vitamin E by the bottle. Dr. Mercola points out there's a nuance here. Most people on a Western diet have too much LA, which means their need for vitamin E is raised. But if you can get your LA levels down, you might not need as much supplementation.
Right? He suggests that if you keep LA below 5 grams a day for about 3 years, your body's need for supplementation may decline, or only be necessary occasionally. Quite a commitment. But it's a good perspective for people trying to adjust their diet in the long run.
It is. And if you do indulge in a meal that's high in LA, you know, those unstoppable onion rings or that bag of chips calling your name, having a little vitamin E capsule afterwards can mitigate the damage from that meal. It's like an insurance policy for your cheat days.
Which is nice because while we try to eat healthily most of the time, life happens. Sometimes you find yourself with a batch of French fries. And let's be real, no one's perfect. Now,
when it comes to the actual supplement, Dr. Mercola emphasizes going with natural sources rather than synthetic. Synthetic versions often have labels like DL-alpha tocopherol instead of D-alpha tocopherol, which indicates the presence of D and L isomers. Only the D isomer is beneficial, apparently.
That's right. So if a label has DL in front, that's a red flag. And if you really want to optimize, you go for a full spectrum of tocopherols and tocotrienols, because vitamin E is actually a family of compounds, 8 to be precise.
Exactly. Sometimes people think, oh, I'm just going to pick up that cheap synthetic brand, but they end up with a less potent and possibly less beneficial product. If you're going to do it right. You want the best bang for your buck and your body.
I do like how Dr. Mercola suggests that natural forms are stored in fat tissue, so if you have a decent diet, your body can hold on to that supply for a bit. That means we don't necessarily have to take enormous daily doses.
Yes, especially if you're mindful of the synergy with healthy fats, like coconut oil, for better absorption. It's that old idea that you can pop vitamins all day, but if they're not absorbed, you're just making expensive urine.
Let's get into some of the nuances of the diet side, because not everyone wants to pop a pill. Some folks prefer to get their nutrients strictly from whole foods. In this case, Dr. Mercola points to certain fruits like kiwi and mango, and green leafy veggies.
And let's not forget grass-fed meats, like beef or bison, which can be good sources of vitamin E without the linoleic acid overload you get from so many vegetable oils. People don't always think of meat as containing vitamin E, but if it's grass-fed, the nutrient profile can be favorable.
True. But remember that if someone's not regularly eating these particular foods, or if they're balancing that with a bunch of high LA items, supplementation might fill the gap.
Right. The big takeaway is to treat supplementation as a strategic move. Not a more is better scenario, but rather enough to offset that high LA meal. Or enough to help your T cells get the upper hand if your diet isn't perfect.
Let's summarize the immune part, because that's kind of the central point here. As we age, our immune system, specifically cell-mediated immunity, tends to get a bit sluggish. Vitamin E helps it perk up. The T cells multiply more effectively.
Which translates to fewer infections, fewer sniffles that turn into major episodes, and fewer random viruses getting the better of us. That alone is a huge quality-of-life boost for seniors.
Right? Being able to recover faster or resist infections is a game changer for older adults who'd like to remain active. Having that freedom to travel, see family, and enjoy life without worrying about every stray germ.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, health is about being able to do what you want without your body being an obstacle. And when we talk about something as simple as a vitamin, it's inspiring to know that small changes can yield big benefits.
Let's pivot a bit to the aspect of healthy aging. We touched on how vitamin E is beneficial beyond just immunity. There's the protection from oxidative stress in your cells, which can affect so many organs.
I love the apple analogy that Dr. Mercola references. You cut the apple, leave it in the open air, and it browns. That browning is similar to what free radicals do to our cells. Vitamin E prevents that browning from becoming widespread.
And that prevention helps keep the structural integrity of cells throughout the body. Think of it like a city with numerous buildings. Oxidative stress is like a slow bulldozer or termite infestation, nibbling at the foundations. Vitamin E is the city inspector who ensures everything's up to code.
Great image. And it's not just about long-term problems like heart disease or cognitive decline. Sometimes the day-to-day energy levels and overall vitality we feel can be linked to how well our cells cope with oxidative stress.
Indeed. People might notice things like less fatigue, better stamina, or clearer thinking. Now, obviously, it's not the only factor, but it's a piece of the puzzle.
Should we talk about the vision side? Because Dr. Mercola also mentions how oxidative stress affects the eyes, leading to cloudiness like a camera lens with smudges.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because so many older adults worry about losing their vision. It's one of those devastating aspects of aging when reading a menu becomes a Herculean task. If vitamin E can offer a measure of support, that's pretty important.
For sure. The analogy of the lens cleaner is apt. We're not necessarily going to see a quick fix, but over time, antioxidant support can help keep those eyes in better shape than they might otherwise be.
And while we can't promise X-ray vision or anything, every bit of maintenance helps. It's like giving your camera lens a gentle wipe every day before you start snapping pictures.
The more I think about it, the more I realize that talking about vitamin E is essentially talking about preventive maintenance for your body at every level. Immunity, circulation, cognition, vision. It's a multi-tool in your nutritional toolbox.
Exactly. And that's probably why it's always had that aura of being a miracle vitamin. But to be fair, no single nutrient is the entire miracle. It's part of a bigger synergy.
Right? We don't want to oversell it, but it's definitely an important pillar in the grand scheme of wellness. And as Dr. Mercola emphasizes, especially in the context of modern diets, it can be the missing piece for many people.
True. Because if we're constantly bombarded with LA from processed foods, we're creating the perfect storm for oxidative stress. Then you throw in the aging factor, and it can be a disaster waiting to happen.
Let's dig into that Western diet pitfall a little more. It's so easy for people to consume large amounts of seed oils, chips, snack bars, fast food items, and other high LA culprits. And once that LA is in your body, it's not like it just disappears overnight.
Right? The half-life of LA in your body's fat stores is quite long. That's why Dr. Mercola suggests a multi-year approach to truly get those levels under control. You're basically waiting for your body to cycle out those old fat stores and replace them with new ones that hopefully contain less LA.
Which is a challenge because a lot of people want immediate results. But the body's processes aren't that quick. Think of it like turning a giant ocean liner around. Progress is definitely possible, but it's going to happen in slow motion.
Good analogy. Meanwhile, supplementation can help mitigate that issue. But the real solution is adjusting diet so you're not continually topping up LA. It's like trying to bail water out of a leaking boat. You need to fix the leak if you want to stay afloat.
Now, let's talk specifics on supplement forms. Dr. Mercola recommends the natural form labeled D-alpha-tocopherol, sometimes combined with other tocopherols and tocotrienols. This ensures a better synergy.
Yes, and the presence of DL-alpha-tocopherol indicates a synthetic form that might have both D and L isomers, effectively diluting its potency.
That's an important detail for label readers. A lot of folks get confused by the letters. D or DL. It's probably all the same. But it's not. The difference is significant in terms of effectiveness.
And he also advises picking a supplement that avoids genetically engineered ingredients, which can sneak in from corn, soy, or cottonseed. So, a cleaner, full-spectrum product is ideal.
Right. It's about thinking beyond the front label. It might say natural in big letters, but you need to dig deeper. Usually the real story is on the back in fine print.
One thing I appreciate is that we have these guidelines without repeating cautionary disclaimers every 2 seconds. Our listeners know to do their own research and talk with someone if they have a complicated medical situation.
Yes, exactly. We don't need to turn every sentence into a big neon warning. People are grown-ups here. They get it. Let's just give them the facts so they can make informed decisions.
So, from an everyday perspective, if you're listening and you're thinking, I'm getting older, I feel a bit run down, my immune system might not be the fortress it once was, then consider evaluating your vitamin E intake.
Absolutely. Start with diet. Can you incorporate those good sources, like fresh produce with low LA, grass-fed meats, maybe some nuts if you're not worried about the extra LA? It's about balancing your sources and not overdoing any single food group.
And if you realize your diet is less than perfect, or if you're traveling a lot, living a hectic lifestyle, maybe a well-chosen vitamin E supplement is your best friend.
Precisely. Let it be your shield in a world that's constantly trying to rust your cells. No need for a giant suit of armor, but a little extra plating can't hurt.
I like that metaphor, a small yet mighty shield. Now, speaking of small yet mighty, let's circle back to the T cells. It's fascinating how a single vitamin can encourage more robust T cell activity.
Indeed. It's a reminder that sometimes the simplest solutions can have profound effects. We often get lost in complicated therapies or endless medication lists. Meanwhile, we might have overlooked the humble vitamin, quietly doing its job.
It's like discovering that the best detective in the precinct was the unassuming staffer who rarely spoke. Then one day, you put them on a case, and they break it wide open.
I told you I was good at my job, says vitamin E, sipping tea politely in the corner.
Now, beyond the immunity-boosting aspect, we touched on healthy aging, heart, brain, eyes. That's a broad coverage area, which leads me to think, if you're supporting your immune cells, are you automatically supporting those other areas? Or is it more that vitamin E has distinct actions for each?
A bit of both. The improved immunity is specifically about T cells and reducing susceptibility to infections. But the antioxidant effect behind that T-cell boost is also at play in the heart, brain, and eyes. So the underlying mechanism, antioxidative protection, serves multiple body systems.
That's good synergy. Because we often talk about synergy in the body. Rarely does a nutrient do only one thing in one place. It's all interconnected.
Exactly. Especially with aging, you want to tackle it from multiple angles. Keep your cells from rusting, keep your immune response strong, keep your mental clarity. They're all facets of the same puzzle.
Let's do a quick recap for clarity. Dr. Mercola is highlighting that vitamin E, especially the natural full-spectrum forms, enhances cell-mediated immunity in older adults. It helps T cells replicate and function better, thus reducing infection risk.
Vitamin E is also a potent antioxidant that helps protect cells from oxidative stress. This rust-proofing effect extends to your heart, brain, and eyes, supporting healthy aging.
Many people don't get enough from diet alone, partly due to the high intake of linoleic acid in the Western diet, which elevates the body's need for vitamin E.
And if you reduce your LA intake long-term, your need for supplemental vitamin E might drop. But in the meantime, strategically using vitamin E, especially after a high LA meal, can help mitigate damage.
Look for natural D-alpha tocopherol, or a blend that includes all tocopherols and tocotrienols. Avoid synthetic DL-alpha tocopherol forms, or those loaded with GMOs.
And consider synergy. Taking vitamin E with a bit of healthy fat improves absorption. And that's essentially the Cliff Notes version of Dr. Mercola's perspective.
So, where does that leave us, dear Alara?
It leaves us with the knowledge that sometimes the simplest changes, like a good vitamin E supplement or a tweak in your diet, can have profound effects on the immune system and overall well-being.
Which is comforting news. We don't need to break the bank on fancy contraptions or exotic therapies. It can be as simple as being mindful of the invisible rust in our bodies and choosing to do something about it.
If your T cells had a voice, they'd probably say something like, "Thanks for the new recruits. Let's go show those pathogens who's boss."
And then they do a celebratory dance, probably a conga line, because T cells deserve to have a little fun.
As we wrap up, I think the main takeaway is that aging does not have to be a constant step downhill. With small, consistent choices, like paying attention to nutrients such as vitamin E, we can sustain energy, resilience, and health deeper into our later years.
Absolutely. And while we might not be able to halt the march of time entirely, we can certainly have a say in how gracefully we handle its footsteps. Tuning up the immune system, protecting cells, and fueling ourselves wisely are solid strategies.
That's right. And for everyone listening, hopefully this conversation serves as an invitation to investigate your own intake of vitamin E. Maybe you'll start checking ingredient labels, or maybe you'll toss that industrial seed oil lurking in your pantry.
Yes, banish the suspicious oils, and replace them with things that actually support you, because those tiny T cells are counting on you.
This is the essence of Dr. Mercola's cellular wisdom. Small insights about the building blocks of health that can make a big difference over time.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, I think we've covered everything from the biology of immunity to the comedic potential of T-cell dance parties.
We aim to deliver a comprehensive package. Now, next time on Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom, we'll take a closer look at another corner of the health universe. Maybe we'll talk about the unsung heroes in your gut microbiome. We'll see.
Until then, dear listeners, keep your cells happy, your LA low, and your vitamin E levels in a sweet spot. The T cells will thank you, the brain will thank you, and your future self will definitely thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay curious, stay healthy, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom.
Bye for now, everyone.
And that's a wrap on vitamin E, or as we like to call it around here, the rust-proofing superhero.
Precisely. Give your cells a little cape and watch them fly. Thank you for joining us on this quest for knowledge, sprinkled with comedic musings.
Take care, everyone. See you next time.
See you soon, and don't forget, even microscopic heroes need the right sidekicks. Let vitamin E be your sidekick.
Couldn't agree more. Until next time.